Today's guest is Rogers Healy, an award-winning Dallas-based real estate leader recognized throughout the country, who did something most of us would never dare to do. He walked away from all that to build a venture capital firm focused on consumer goods. Now, Rogers isn't our typical not done guest. He's not a hotel CEO or AI CEO, but I invited him on because he embodies what it truly means to be not done, never shying away from betting on himself. His candor, his vulnerability offer a different kind of executive profile, one rooted in relationships, in being a super connector, and in being genuine and wanting to get to know and help others. With that, let's get on with the show. Well, welcome back to another episode of Not Done. I'm Sloan Dean, and today I've got a good friend, Rogers Healy, on the show today. Rogers is one of the most recognized names in North Texas. You may know him because you've seen him on a lot of those blue signs out in front of houses. He's built an incredible personal brand, but quite frankly, getting to know Rogers, I think it's his authenticity that pulls through. And Rogers, a few years ago, stepped away from the day-to-day of real estate and started Morrison Seger Venture Capital, which I think really is a sign of the greatness where, Rogers, you built a tremendous legacy in real estate, but now you're doing something even bigger. So welcome to the show, Rogers. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. And I guess I'm not done. I love music and we'll talk about it, but one of my favorite musicians ever is Phil Collins. We've got a daughter named after Collins, and his last tour was called Not Dead Yet. So I was like, all right, we're not done yet. I'll say you've done such a great job with this show, and you have such an awesome fan base online, but as someone that knows Sloan in person, it's a treat. And so I'm excited. I've asked him to have me as a guest, and we finally figured it out. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, you're a celebrity here in Dallas. So those of us that live here know you well, but many of my hospitality kinfolk across the world maybe don't know you. So I thought we'd start with your personal brand and story. And, you really started out in real estate. Maybe you share a bit of your journey.
I learned really quickly about Sloan. He's a lifelong achiever, and he's the kind of guy that it's an easy bet to put on him, whether it's, he's a tennis player, he's a husband, he's a dad, he's a champion in the business world. And frankly, that was not my story. My story was I learned early on how to lean into my personality and to relative fearlessness, in the sense that I never got nervous like talking to somebody or introducing myself to somebody. And I was grateful that that's how God wired me. But over the course of time, it really became my theme because I realized that I didn't have a hidden talent. I wasn't a good athlete. I wasn't a good student. I never had a girlfriend until college. And so I kind of got used to that, which, maybe is a good thing. But because of that, relative worldly success was hard for me to embrace. But yeah, I come from an awesome family. Family taught me early on to love Jesus and to love my family and to stay humble, which again was easy to do when you kind of suck at everything. We moved around a bunch, and I was always the funny fat kid that was easy to, I was the fun guy to have class with, even for the teachers. Moved from Corpus to San Antonio, and then had just a crazy tragedy happen to our family that led to a beautiful story. We moved to Dallas on a whim 30 years ago next week. And yeah, just kind of plowed my way to, I don't know, not relevance, but to access. And I think that as someone that grew up without accolades and without people really wanting to know my story, that became a large part of my driving force for the better part of my 20s and my 30s. And then when I met my wife, everything changed. Colin Hay, who's one of my favorite singers, he's a lead singer of a group called Men at Work and has an incredible solo career, but he's got a song called Waiting for My Real Life to Begin, which everyone that's listening to this, I encourage you to listen to it. But it's essentially just saying that, you think your life has begun, and then you meet the love of your life, or you become a father, and that's when it happens. And for me, when I met Abby, my life started. So to your point, I did a pretty significant pivot professionally, but I also did it personally. And that's what I'm most proud of, is that my entire life is defined by my family. So that's me in a nutshell.
I love that. Yeah. None of us look back and wish we had worked more.
Yeah. I like working, and I think that's why you and I became kindred spirit pretty quickly, is that I think work is meaningful, and I think it adds a lot of value.
Agreed.
But it doesn't have to define you. And prior to Abby, it defined me. And, with real estate, you can buy fame. You can go spend money and literally buy the mother of all learning is repetition. And I heard that early on. I'm like, yard signs, billboards, magazine ads, newspaper ads, mailers, and you make more money, you turn the volume up. It's like investing in a consumer brand, right? The more money they have, the more access they're going to have to increasing their market. And it became a drug. And then I fell in love with someone who's private. And that was so fascinating to me. I was like, what? Your Instagram is private? Why? And just, it was this hard stop of humility where I was like, oh my gosh, these things that I've been chasing mean absolutely nothing. But it took me, going through that journey to get there, which is why I think people kind of appreciate my story, because there's nothing crazy about it other than just being honest. But I had to get there.
Well, I wanna dive into one thing that I think is really a key to highlight that I've noticed about you as a close friend. So my favorite book that I read in my early 20s and got me hooked on Malcolm Gladwell as a author was The Tipping Point. It's how little things make a big difference. And in it, Malcolm talks about how there's three kinds of people. There's mavens, there's salesmen, and there's connectors. And I think of you, Rogers, as the biggest powerhouse connector I have ever met. You just have this way of connecting people. And I grew up in Atlanta. And so there's this one intersection of highways called Spaghetti Junction. And you've got 285, 75, 85, everything coming together. I think of you as the Spaghetti Junction of Dallas. Where does that come from?
The older I've gotten, I think God blessed me with a really good memory. And I think I have a photographic memory as well. But if Sloan tells me he's excited about being a girl dad and learning about the hospitality industry, maybe AI, and I remember that because that's important to you. I've always been like that. I learned early on in real estate, especially on the residential side, that the best way to get a referral is to give one. And so I heard that. I was like, all right, a referral to Sloan might not be a direct revenue impact, but it might be someone that's going to help them. And it might be somebody that's going to introduce them to someone else. I do it because I'm a genuine friend, but I also want to stay top of mind. And over the time, if I introduce you to 50 of my friends in a group text over the course of a week, and one of those deals turns into something that helps you succeed professionally, you're going to link it back to my intro. And maybe that means, oh my God, I want to introduce Rogers to my friend that's raising money or that might want to invest, or they want to sell their house. Maybe they want to sell their office building. And I've done that since I pursued the professional world. The difference now is that, real estate blessed me. I was able to have really cool stories and access, but kind of a one-trick pony, right? Like if someone doesn't need your professional services with real estate, that's kind of it. So with this, it's like, look, there's no end goal with raising money. There's always going to be another deal we're doing. And if I add you to my list, eventually there might be something that you want to participate in. And that's been honestly liberating as hell, because it brings out a side of me that is so innocent and excitable that I didn't get to experience in real estate. It overwhelms some people, but I just love it.
Well, carry that Spaghetti Junction with pride. I should make you a hoodie and give it to you.
Well, I've already got the mustache like an Italian, and I'm very not Italian, but I feel like I just got one step closer to being in the mafia.
I love it. I want to read a paraphrase quote from your interview with D Magazine, and I want to read it for our listeners. Everyone in the world knew Rogers Healy, but with recognition came mockery and public opinion he had to reckon with. Everyone knows you, but then everybody's got an opinion.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that? And I'll preface, I think the human condition is often we care too much of what everybody else thinks. I'll preface with that.
I'm 45, grown man, have a wife and kids, but I still have feelings. D Magazine and DCEO, which is a local publication here that's been just a powerhouse publication, is owned by the Allison family. They're awesome people. About 8 months ago, they approached me about doing an article. I didn't know it was going to be on the cover. And one of the first questions that Leighton, the journalist, asked me, he's like, do you want people to like you? I'm like, yeah. It's like, yeah, I think that's human nature, right? There wouldn't be the Beatles or Taylor Swift if there wasn't love. I never had public anything. And then I started promoting myself and I was like, this is fantastic. And then people started saying negative things about me online or to my face. I'm like, what? And it hurt. And it still hurts. But what's happened over time is, through the blessing of maturity, I don't have the time to worry about it, right? But it still stings. Like D Magazine did a really nice post yesterday. And it was a video of me just telling my story. And I was like, just wait, the wolves are going to come out. And they did. And then like attracts like, which with the internet mafia, it's kind of crazy. And it's people that I know. And I'm like, what? Your cousin works for my firm. And you're talking, but the temptation of me being like, what are you talking about? Like, I grew up with you. I can't do that. And that's the stuff that I think nobody can be prepared for in any public facing persona. It's tough. And so, you either have to just have thick skin and deal with it, or you respond to it, or you just find a way to drown it out. The humor of this is that I was a realtor, right? I was the first real estate person in the country, maybe the world, to do social media. And it wasn't because I had this pioneer mindset and I was like, this is going to be my story. It's because it was free. It got me instant attention. There's a song by Eric Church called Mr. Misunderstood. That's not a huge hit, but I heard it for the first time. I was like, damn, that's kind of my story, is that the people that know me would back me up because they know my heart and they know what my life is all about.
When you started to scale the real estate business, when did you realize you were no longer just a realtor?
Well, the literal answer is when I had to take my broker exam, which
well, fair enough.
I'll never forget my college roommate, who was my very first agent. He got business cards and it said Rogers Healy and Associates on one side, and on the back side it had his email at Rogers Healy. And I was like, that's my name. Like, that's so weird. I was 25 years old. I didn't realize that my job was to lead a company versus just be in sales. I guess I kind of fought it for a little bit, but yeah, pretty quickly.
As you look back on those formative years, what advice would you give yourself? Because I think so often when you're in the moment, you're very optimistic, but at the same time, you're blocking and tackling, and you just don't know what you don't know. What would be some of the advice you'd give?
Chill out. Listen. My relative wisdom came over the course of time by making really stupid decisions, just reactive decisions. One of the things I learned kind of the hard way is to, be slow to speak and quick to listen. There's no playbook for scaling a company, but on the investing side, investing in second-time founders is usually easier. Like Harbor was an easy investment. Like I saw Kevin Gromizin in Maine. I was like, great, you can go reinvent air and I'm going to back you. But I was a first-time founder, right? I was really a first-time leader. I was still evolving internally. The human side of me, if somebody was to quit or screw me over, I'm like, all right, well, screw you. You're dead to me. And that usually doesn't end well. So that kind of stuff was a journey. And it took me kind of hitting relative rock bottom about a decade ago, where I was like, oh man, maybe the common theme with all of this turmoil is me. And so I had to rework the way that I thought, and it was painful, but I think that's what led me to my wife. I think that you either have the entrepreneur and founder wiring or you don't. I don't think it's something that you can wake up one day and be like, today's a day that I'm going to be a leader. It's like you either have it or you don't. But I didn't have the proper training from a professional standpoint to launch into success. I had to kind of build my plane as it was mid-flight.
And I think that's a lot of us. I mean, frankly, I put myself in that same category. I never lacked ambition. I never lacked drive, but I definitely lacked patience. And being a good listener has been a life learning skill that I'm still working on.
In real estate, eventually, you have seen it all. But at 25 years old, as an owner of a company, I had not seen it all.
You're one of the few people I've had on the show and one of the things that I really admire about you, and also, I'm in this place where I walked away from being a self-made CEO at 36, and I walked away at 44. And a lot of people look at me like, why? Why would you do that? You didn't walk away. You still are involved in that business, but you decided to pivot.
Yeah.
How did you arrive at that decision? And what were some of the emotions that drove that decision? Because I think so often what I've seen is that success becomes part of the identity of the human, and they almost can't give it up.
Underneath every bold decision is probably years or decades of agony. I love real estate. I love what it represents. The innocence of real estate was ripped away from me pretty quickly as I found success. But in my head, I knew that professionally there was something else I wanted to pursue. I never shared it with anybody. And then I met my wife, and understandably so, especially given the intention I had from a public persona. Everyone in my world knew me as the real estate guy. That's it. But I remember I told her, it was right before COVID, and I was like, hey, I think I had a couple cocktails. I was like, I need to tell you something that I've never told anyone. I don't think real estate is it. She's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I don't. And like, even just saying that was just this like release of anxiety and stress and emotions. I was like, I really love the investing world. And I really love connecting with consumer founders, and I love connecting with tech founders. And I think I understand it. And just by saying that, it made it so real. And in my head, for 10 years, I had mapped out what it looked like. I didn't know it was this whole story with Bob Seger Van Morrison. That was not there yet. And, in an instant, in very Abby fashion, my wife, she's like, then do it. I was like, damn it. I was like, that is the worst thing to say to someone like me, because I'm going to. But it took me time to get there. And I walked away from a career that was pretty damn predictable.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really hard for people that love the challenge of figuring things out. I had to follow my heart, and it's been awesome. Other than the fact that I haven't made money in 7 years, I know that it'll come, but I'm happy. And I was grateful to find people with my real estate company that God just placed at such opportune times to take over. And that was possibly the hardest thing I've ever done, was very quickly realize they're better at my job than I was. That was humbling, but I can have a mustache now.
I can remember exactly where I was the moment I remember having the thought of, I need to leave Remington. It was December of 2023. I didn't resign till March of 2025. So it took me 14, 15 months to actually pull the trigger. I remember that night, I kind of teared up. I'm not a crier, but I teared up, and Pam and I were out of the country. It was just her and I turned to her and I said, I think I have to leave Remington. She looked at me and said, I agree, and has never once questioned the decision. I have had a lot of people question the decision, but not her.
Man, I tell you, I heard something a long time ago, and my background with relationships was sure as hell not a easy one. The quote people tell you is like, you want to marry someone who lets you be you. That's bullshit. Marry somebody that encourages you to be you. I think that to me was so beautiful about Abby, and just like you with Pam, it's like the right person is not going to even give you a half a second of hesitation. I trust you, go do it. That to me is the coolest thing about being married to my wife, is that I know that we have each other's back.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. So in the Piece and D magazine, when they're talking to you about Morrison Seger, the venture capital firm that you founded in 2022, you talk about simplicity, consumer understanding, and imagination as investments, that kind of stand the test of time. A lot of people are really interested in venture capital. How do you approach it?
As dumb as it sounds, watch Shark Tank and then watch the show that I'm on called Entrepreneur Elevator Pitch. It's on YouTube, it's on Cheddar, it's about to be syndicated on CBS or NBC. That's created such a new world of entrepreneurs, both young and older. The way to get into venture capital is to have access and introductions. It started with me very innocently. My buddy Kevin Lavelle, he's the founder of a company called Mizzen in Maine and another one called Harbor. I was friends with him, and he had this idea 15 years ago and said, I'm starting a dry fit dress shirt and I'd like for you to invest. I was like, cool, I'm in. That was the diligence. That was literally it. It started with a gut instinct where everyone that's, classically trained in Wall Street and, Goldman Sachs is going to tell you a different story, but it all is going to end up being to a feeling you had that made you excited to pursue it. A lot of the deals that I'm doing, it's deals like this Pathwater deal. They weren't raising money. It's a YPO guy. I followed his journey for a year. And then he's like, you know what? We like you. We'll invite you in. They closed the deal a year prior. And that's the real estate side of me that led me to think that way, is in real estate, you really make your money on the purchase. And a lot of times you're buying a property that wasn't available to anyone else. Knock on their door. Sloan, Pam, would you sell your property? Maybe. Great. You're going to sell your property. What do you want for it? I can never be resentful to real estate, is that I had that headspace. So yeah, it's finding deals that you can really believe in, and finding deals that you can really support, and finding deals that you can go and help as an involved investor. And that was how I was before I started my own firm, is if I invested in Waterloo early on, which I did, I'm going to drink Waterloo, and I'm going to drink it on a podcast, and I'm going to tell my friends about it, and I'm going to drink it at a restaurant, and I'm going to order it at an airport, even if they don't have it, because if you ask for it enough, they're going to be like, I hear this Waterloo thing, we should carry it. Great. They just acquired a customer for nothing because I asked. And unfortunately, that's a pretty rare approach. But when I went and started the venture firm, my goal was to bring people on board to invest with us that could help essentially be shepherds for the brands. And it's been so fun, but it's not as fancy or as exclusive as people think.
How do you balance instinct with data? How do you balance that as you're looking at new deals?
It's a combination of a lot of things. One is outsource the stuff that I'm not licensed or qualified to do. Accounting, legal, that's pretty simple. That just costs money. This year, we probably saw 3,000 or 4,000 inbound deals.
And how many of those what's your participation or sponsor rate?
We did 3. I would have loved to have done 50, right? It's just, it has to be the right ones because everything I do is a one-off deal, which means I have to really, really believe in it and essentially become a salesperson for that brand for a few months until I hit my number. So it just depends, but we have a process that I'm really proud of, and it's nothing fancy. It's just, Sloan, I like your deal. I'm going to put it through my cooker. I'm going to get online, do my research. I'm going to touch it. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to use it. I'm going to talk to people that are potentially customers, but it's a process, and I think that from start to finish to even start something is probably 3 or 4 months. And then to go and actually get on the road show is probably 3 to 6 more months. So it's a long-term relationship, but before we even really introduce it to our network, it could have been a year. Like we just introduced one a week ago, Mosh Bar, which is founded by Maria Shriver and Patrick Schwarzenegger. It was a year and a half of me looking at it, waiting for them to change their packaging, waiting for them to have their team grow. And, that takes a lot of patience, but luckily that's not the only deal I'm looking at.
Yeah. I'm curious, you've seen a lot. I think our listeners would be curious to hear, what's the best story of a founder surprising you, for better or worse?
Everyone truly is a cool story. This Pathwater deal has been one of my favorite ones that I've done for a lot of reasons. One of which is it kind of, Sloan and I met through YPO, which is just a cool organization. It's a business leader mafia. And I found this guy, Shadi. He's an Austin-based founder, and he got an award with YPO a couple years ago. I followed him on LinkedIn, and we became friends. There's always that initial courtship of like, oh, is this guy legit? Am I going to like him? Next thing you know, his family's in town. We're having dinner with him and his wife and his newborn. And just that human element makes me want to work harder. So they're all special. The celebrity-backed deals are always awesome, like Mosh. Patrick Schwarzenegger, Maria Shriver. Hard to bet against them, right? And we have to still put them through the smell test. And I could not have been more impressed. Goat Fuel, Jerry Rice, the greatest football player of all time. It's like he works harder than anyone I've ever met. And he's 60 years old. He wakes up, he does his Peloton, he drinks his Goat Fuel, and he grinds. It's like to see that behind the scenes is invigorating. But there's still shit that happens, and you cannot imagine the amount of curveballs we get. Like I'm drinking a Waterloo, and it might be delivered, the can might explode, or you might have contamination at a factory, or have your wrappers from Asia stuck on a boat because of tariffs. But I think that's the stuff that makes you feel alive, and frankly, as someone who's done it before, it's like, it's okay, we're going to figure this out. It's just logistics. But they're all fun. Like they rocket ship. And I'll always talk about Kevin Lavelle because he's the one that changed my life and got me into Mizzen. And they started Harbor, something that was going to compete in the traditional baby monitor circuit.
Right.
Kevin got a phone call from a family in South Texas that has a special needs daughter, and they said, this has changed my life. He's like, what do you mean? We were spending hundreds of dollars a night to have a company essentially sit outside the door of my adult special needs child. And we got a Harbor, and the Harbor has replaced that service. And Kevin's like, there's a pivot, and it's just a wild ride. But I love the fact that I'm learning about baby monitors, the special needs community, sparkling water, ice cream, Pearl Snap shirts, hats, wristbands. It's just this constant learning. There's a guy that I used to exercise with 5 years ago. It was early in the morning. He goes, isn't it crazy that when you become an adult, you stop using your imagination? And I was like, what? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I was like, I want to feel like a kid every single day. And this opportunity with venture gives me the ability to just be creative with my mind. And I think because of that, I can stay young-ish.
Yeah, I love that. A life learner is definitely a gift. I mean, and you're right, but some people lose that, or don't strive for that. I think that's a huge mistake. What's one thing that you think founders sometimes over-focus on, or something that is talked about a lot by founders that actually makes you a little skeptical?
What other people think, right? You got to trust your gut instinct. I'm being hypocritical with this, but if you worry too much about what people are going to think about your idea, you're probably not going to execute on your idea. And it's easier said than done. And I think you need to have your inner circle. So you need to have your family, your Bible study, your forum and YPO, just a vote of confidence where people be like, oh, that's not insane. But if you ask too many people, eventually someone's going to be jealous and tell you not to do it. It's like, no, if you have an idea, first thing is don't overthink it and trust your gut. And the second thing is learn how to communicate, especially if you're raising money. I get spoiled. Kevin Lavelle, Harbor, he sends me a weekly update. Weekly. I'm lucky with some of our other deals to maybe get a yearly update. I think communication is so paramount. Like if I hear news on any of our deals, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. I distribute it because I don't think people like surprises. So trust your gut and perfect the art of communication.
I love that. You are the most passionate friend I have when it comes to your love of music. You named the VC firm after your favorite artist, Morrison Seger. Your children have musical names, and you have over, I think, 5,000 pieces of music memorabilia. You're basically a museum, your house is. Where does that love of music come from, and how does that show up in the workplace? And
Big question. The one that I get most often is, where does the obsession come from? No one knows. My dad is from Pakistan, my mom is from New Mexico, and they like music, but I never grew up and they said, come here, let me introduce you to Elton John or to Wayne Newton or to Beethoven. This random thing that as a very young kid, I was 3, and I remember hearing a song. I was like, what is that? I want to know more about that song. Play it again. Buy the tape. And every Christmas, it was always, I want the newest Billy Joel cassette, or I want the newest Technotronic album. And it just was this journey that has been a big part of my life. And to the question about venture and all that stuff, of course, right? Like I'll ask you, I'll put you on the spot. I don't know if I've ever asked you this, but who is your favorite musician?
boy, different in different parts of life, but I'm really in actually to EDM these days. I like Glass Animals a lot. I've taken my kids to see them when they're in town.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So I just like the upbeat.
okay. So let's say With or Without You is maybe your favorite U2 song. All right. Maybe it's one. Maybe it's Where the Streets Have No Name. Whatever it is.
Right.
But
And I saw them with Lady Gaga at the Sphere in Vegas, and I thought I had died and gone to heaven,
wow.
by the way. Yeah, and I didn't know Lady Gaga was going to be with them that night. It was amazing.
Wow. By the way, Lady Gaga, possibly the most underrated musician of all time, possibly the greatest musician of our generation. Second part of your question, how does music have a parallel to investing?
Hmm.
Goes back to the gut instinct thing, that when you heard that U2 song or you heard that Glass Animal song, your hair stands up on your arms and you turn it up and time freezes. That's investing. That there's going to be deals. It doesn't matter what anyone else says. I feel it. And finding a way to take a relatively innocent approach to pursuing a deal is the most invigorating thing I've ever felt professionally. It's just that infinite elasticity of knowledge and excitement becomes an obsession, which in turn makes it kind of hard to turn it off. But that's how I'm wired.
You know, I just went to Fountain Life last month and did all the tests, and they do like this very intensive MRI imaging of your brain. I would be really curious. I bet you are one of the most right hemisphere dominant humans because your right hemisphere controls emotional responses, intuition, social understanding, and it's where the passion for music comes from. And also people that are really strong right hemisphere also are really good at like picking up on body language, things like that. So I bet it's more linked to people that are really good at relationship building. I bet your right hemisphere lights up like a Christmas tree.
Well, thank you. I've never had anyone, first I get called Spaghetti Man and now
Right hemisphere.
not right hemisphere, but yeah,
Not to diagnose you. I'm not a doctor,
I don't know.
but
I'd be interested. I wouldn't be surprised if you were. I'd be interested to see how that all plays out. But yeah, I think I'm a creative before I'm anything. How do I be a creative in the professional world? It's easier in venture than it was in real estate. I'm not an artist. I don't know how to do that. It's just that my mind, it never turns off, which makes it really hard to sleep. But that's interesting. One day I'll do that.
well, you have so many different things going on. You're the chair of our YPO group. You started Morrison Seger. You have 3 young children. You still have the real estate. How do you find the time? I find with the busier person is, the more productive. It really is true. If you want to get something done, ask a busy person. How do you balance it and deal with stress?
You just do. You just do. Right? Look, the YPO stuff, that's the blessing that brought us together as friends and brothers and partners. Had I known it was going to take a solid 2 years of my life, I probably still would have done it because it was a challenge. And I knew there was something on the other side that would lead to stuff like this. I think the worst feeling ever is the feeling of I wish I would have tried. And I've never said that, but it's hard. Oh, you get it? It's hard. Like the amount of people that you have had leadership over is insane, but you've done it, which means your real responsibility is Pam and your children. And to have that perfected, everything else is secondary. And it makes the worldly stress be not comical, but like, okay, all right, someone is mad or upset. It's like, okay, we'll deal with that. But my real responsibility is inside the walls of my home.
That's great perspective taking. Perspective is everything. We've come to the time, my friend, where we do rapid fire to close us out. So, no right or wrong answer, just a fun way to siphon off some good advice and interesting facts about you. So, I'll give you a softball to start. Favorite book of all time?
I don't read books. I'm dyslexic. I have ADHD, and I kind of read the Malcolm Gladwell book you talked about, but I read my devotional every morning, but I'm not.
Have you read the book that you gave me yet? This All In? No.
I think the more important question is, will you read it?
What's one mistake that turned out to be a gift?
I was married to the wrong person about 15 years ago, and I thought it was going to define me, and it didn't. And it ended up helping me become the person that God was preparing me to be for my wife, Abby. And look, there's a lot of regrets in my life, but you can't press rewind. Just being humbled publicly multiple times shaped me into the person that I needed to be. So yeah, I'll say that.
If you could rebrand yourself today, what's the tagline?
Dad bods are in. Um,
I like that.
No, one of the coolest quotes I ever heard was "Be yourself, everyone else is taken." If I was to brand myself, it would just be embrace yourself, and embrace who you are. Do it with grace.
Favorite song ever?
Well, this is a multifaceted question. My favorite song of all time is "The Heart of the Matter" by Don Henley. I think the greatest written song of all time is "The Weight" by the band. Our oldest daughter is Henley after Don Henley.
Love it. Well, my friend, I only have you till the top of the hour. We close out every show with, what are you not done with? So Rogers Healy, what are you not done with?
Having kids. There's no end goal with work. There's a lot to prove. I did a podcast for a while, and I'll never forget, this guy told me that you die twice. You die once when your last breath, and you die the second time when someone says your name for the last time ever. And it stuck with me. Can you imagine that?
What if your children carry on your name?
Awesome. Fantastic. But it's more than that. So I'm not done working. I'm not done improving. And I'm not done trying to give people the gift of self-confidence.
Love it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.